could only happen in New York City, you know. And to be honest, I think that the local IGDA chapter has an important role to play in that. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm David Kuchik. I'm basically a QA freelancer, and I was wondering, as New York developers who are, as Eric put it, kind of outside the mainstream game development community just because of location and the culture of the people here, do you guys find it particularly challenging working with most of the publishers are obviously in California, working with people who are very much part of the other kind of more regular culture?
So just to repeat the question, it's about what are the challenges of working with publishers who are geographically remote?
Well, Konami's in Japan.
Well, Konami, the office we work out of, that works, the producer works out of, is in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But I've found that a lot of producers and publishing companies like to visit New York. So that works in our favor dealing with the big company.
Where's THQ?
Yeah, it's very true. Just on that comment, CEO I think visited our studio probably more than any because the investors are here, and all investor stuff. So they always come to heavy hitters always come through town, and but yeah, THQ is actually in Calabasas, or actually it's Agora Hills down in north of LA, and but they have I think about 15, 16 studios. I'm not sure exactly what they're at now, but I think there's only like 2 or 3 on the West Coast. A lot of them in Austin and Chicago, and they're spread out very evenly across the world. It's pretty interesting. So I think it's starting to less and less matter where you are.
I agree. I think there's a distributed process.
For many years, I spent my my E3s and my GDCs in conference rooms pitching games futilely to publishers from places other than New York. But I don't think the distance was the issue. It was like we sucked and they sucked.
There's no happy place in Greg's world. I think we want to wrap up the discussion. One more question? Okay. Yeah, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jill Delton, and I'm from San Francisco Bay Area. I mean, not from New York.
Spy. Just kidding.
More than that, but no, I turned down that position. So my question for you is, Greg kind of triggered this question. I wouldn't ask this, but one of the things, being from the Bay Area, everybody and their mother, including mine, who's started on UO, an original UO player all these years, played computers, etc. And used the word pretentious. And to me, everybody who's a gamer is actually ultra pretentious. So I was kind of curious what you see the next evolution of the gaming technology with the gaming designers, developers, instead of taking another step into what you are defining as pretentious.
So it's okay. So it's kind of picking up on Greg's comment about pretentiousness. Are gamers already pretentious in some ways? A kind of culture of connoisseurship. What does that mean about reaching new audiences?
So I guess my question is, if Joe Gamer is pretentious and sophisticated and intelligent about the games he plays, why do we have G4? Why is the cover of every games magazine featuring some chickie with big boobs? I don't think that. I basically think gamers suck. I mean, I'm a gamer. But, we need Crawford. We need. No. These people need to be educated. So and I think we can do a job of education, and I think in some ways it's pushing in an open door because. People have been playing with games long enough that it's like most. You look at how people respond to film, right? People know who directors are. People are interested in the development process. People know how movies are made. People follow the development of movies. But Joe Gamer knows shit about the games industry, about how games are made, about who the people involved are. Once we start having a culture where you're interested in more than just the surface exposition of what you see, then we're starting to get to the level of potential. And I think we're moving in that direction.
I don't think gamers are fooled by covers. Fooled by big boobs and big explosions. They're there for. They're looking for a way to disappear. I mean, WoW, obviously one of the biggest ones, is nothing about that, but it's more about an experience online, right? And so I wouldn't categorize all players as lame or And I think they do know it. They do know what they want. And I think there's definitely the people that want the action, and there's the people that want the the RTS, that's more strategy, and I think there's definitely more genres to be made, and I think that's where we need to get to our jobs. But I think there's definitely a lot out there, but anyway, I think...
Any final comments on this issue?
It's so complicated. I mean, there's no way to just touch on something like this. I mean,
But here he goes.
I think I disagree with you, Greg. And I mean, I think gamers in general tend to be pretty smart and sophisticated. The way I think about it is that part of the problem is that we are so beholden to video games and computer games in our conception of what games are, and that they still have a lot of sort of like the toy about them, you know, and they still, and I think that they are evolving and growing, and I think one of the ways that they're evolving is kind of away from the device. You know what I mean? I think that's what I see anyway. That's kind of the focus of my company, is that we make games with computers in them instead of the other way around, right? Instead of making computers that go into games. And that you know, I think that we see that as a general evolution away from a focus on the device and a focus on the box that's sitting in front of you. And I think that's one direction in which games will become more, will evolve to be more sophisticated.
Well,
a little bit less about pouring yourself into this imaginary world that's just, you know.
I will say there are various subcultures that have to do with games where I think there is a high degree of intellectual appreciation. You look at people like the kind of board games, Dave Parlett, those kinds of people who are very serious about the evolution of board games over time, the kind of hobbyist role-playing market, the independent RPG movement. These people are completely off the wall and very interesting. Some magazines like The Escapist or Edge, where you're starting to see a higher level of kind of criticism and serious look at the field.
But my problem with what you're saying is that you can't project, like, the problems with the games, right, being limited, and with media like magazines being limited, you can't project that onto the gamers. Like, I don't think it's their fault.
Yeah. Sure it is. If they bought something else, the magazines would be
No, because mainstream media is also mostly poor. Most books are pulp, and it's like all of this is an aesthetic problem with the form, not a problem with the.
I want to look
I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem with the fact that the mass audience sucks in every medium. What I'm saying is I don't really see the kind of intellectual froth that we do see in every other medium in games. And I want it to be there.
All right, let's give Greg Kostakian a last word. Thank you. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Look, this is a very wide-ranging discussion. We looked at 5 very different games in terms of how they were made, why they were made, and the makers of the games. And for me, this is the kind of discussion that actually you'd have a hard time finding outside of New York City, and gives me hope that's one thing that we do have to offer the game industry. Anyway, thank you guys again very much, and here's Wade Tinney.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the panel. I'm just happy we didn't end on pretension as the topic. I was worried about that going up on YouTube.